Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make a super hearty and healthy one-pot Japanese dish called Chanko Nabe. It's a staple in Japanese households, especially popular among small wrestlers. I'll be sharing 6 different variations, but let's start with my favorite, special meatball Chanko. I'm going to teach you how to make the fluffiest meatballs ever. The secret is using a mix of ground pork and chicken. We'll add a little beaten egg for extra fluffiness. Now, since I'm making a small batch for just 1 or 2 people, you can easily double or triple the ingredients if you want to make more. For the full recipe and measurement, check out the link in the description box. After adding the egg, let's add a little grated ginger and garlic. To make the meatballs really fluffy, we are going to add some grated nagaimo, Chinese yam. If you don't have any, don't worry. It'll still be delicious without it. Nagaimo is a bit more watery than yamaimo, Japanese yam. So let's just add a little bit to avoid making the mixture too runny. Now let's add some miso paste, a bit of white sesame seeds, and a little sugar. Mix it all together. By the way, did you know that Chanko originally refers to all the home-cooked meals made by the Chankoban, the person in charge of cooking in a small stable? But it's most commonly used to refer to this type of hot pot. Small wrestlers eat Chanko to build muscle and stay healthy. Each sumo stable has its own secret recipes, and I'd love to try them all, but unfortunately, I can't just walk into a small stable and ask for a bowl. If the meatball mixture is too loose, add a little potato starch. If you didn't add nagaimo, you might not need any potato starch. Just add a little at a time and mix well. Once the mixture is ready, let's boil some water in the pot. Okay, let's shape the meatballs and add them to the boiling water. They might not be perfectly round, but they'll taste amazing. I'm using a donabe, Japanese earthenware pot, but you can use any pot you have. Compared to metal pot, donabe transfer heat more slowly, accumulate that heat, and do not allow it to escape for a long period of time. In addition, it's said that fine thready rays emitted from charcoal and stones heat food slowly from the core, making it possible to cook ingredients deliciously. If you are interested in donabe, please check the My Tools and Seasonings link in the description box. Once the meatballs are cooked, let's take them out and add your favorite vegetable to the bowls. I'm using cabbage, onion, carrots, and fried tofu, Abura-age. You can use whatever you have in your fridge. Chanko Nabe is packed with nutrients and it's really good for your digestion. Small wrestlers eat a lot of Chanko to gain weight, but they also make sure to eat plenty of vegetable and mushroom to stay healthy. Let's add some seasonings to the bowls. Sake, mirin, and soy sauce. Add your vegetable and fried tofu and simmer until they are tender. I'm not using any mushrooms today, but shimeji, enoki, and shiitake mushrooms are great for Chanko Nabe. Add them if you have them. Once the vegetables are tender, add the miso paste. I'm using a mix of rice miso and barley miso. You can adjust the amount and type of miso to your taste. After dissolving the miso, add the meatballs back to the pot. If you want to make it healthier, use 100% chicken breast. Finally, sprinkle some chopped green onions and you are done. Enjoy this hearty and comforting Chanko Nabe. Next up, we got my absolute favorite, creamy chicken chanko. Let's start by chopping our veggies. We'll use onion, carrot, cabbage, and broccoli. I made the carrot into a cute flower shape. Oh, and I forgot to mention, potatoes would be amazing in this soup too. Now for a fun little twist, we are going to use fried tofu, but not just any fried tofu. We are going to stuff it with mochi, rice cake. Do you guys sell individually wrapped mochi where you live? It's super convenient. Let's cut the mochi in half and stuff it into the fried tofu. As shown here, the pockets open cleanly if you roll it over the fried tofu with a chopstick or the like before opening it. It's a common ingredient in oden and it soaks up all the delicious flavor, so I thought it would be perfect for chanko too. Once the mochi is in, we need to seal it up. Let's cut some spaghetti into short pieces and use them as squares. Toothpicks are also common in Japan, but using spaghetti lets you eat it all together. Now let's prep the chicken. I'm using boneless, skinless chicken thigh. Cut them into bite-sized pieces. Let's boil the carrot and onion in some water first. Once they are a bit soft, add the cabbage and chicken. Pour some sake over the chicken to remove any unpleasant smell and enhance the flavor of the broth. Add some consomme. Any stock powder or bouillon is fine. Sugar, soy sauce, and oyster sauce. Since we still have some cabbage left, let's add that in too. Now it's time for our stuffed fried tofu. Broccoli cooks quickly, so we'll add it in later. Let it simmer for about 2 minutes. The mochi is kind of getting in the way, so let's take it out for a moment. Let's add some soy milk. You can use regular milk too. The broccoli is getting a bit too soft, so let's take it out. After mixing in the soy milk, let's return the mochi to the pot and warm it up. Once the soy milk comes to a gentle boil, it's ready. Let's bring the cute flower carrot to the top and add the broccoli back in. One of the best parts about making Chanko Nabe is the finishing touch, udon or rice. Leave some of the broth and add either udon or rice. This time, I'll add udon noodles, add a little more water, and some mentiu noodle soup base. If you don't have a mentiu, you can mix equal parts soy sauce and mirin and add a little dashi powder. Once the broth comes to a gentle boil, add the udon. By the way, in a later recipe, I will show you a version with rice, so stay tuned. Since we have some soy milk left, let's add it in. Crack an egg into the pot and cover it to cook to your liking. Finally, sprinkle some green onions and shichimi togarashi. And it's ready to serve. Carbs are essential for small wrestlers training, so this is a perfect dish for them. Next, we'll use a satin cube to make a very simple chanko. It's a little spicy, so can you guess what it is? First, let's chop up some veggies. We'll use carrot, potatoes, onion, and cabbage. The first three are your glue. Let's boil the carrots, potatoes, and onion in some water until they are tender. Once it's boiling, add the pork. It's already cut into bite-sized pieces, but it might look like a big chunk because it was frozen. Add some sake and minced garlic. Mix it together to coat the meat in the garlic. You'll see some scum form on top, so skim it off. Now let's add some dashi powder. You can use any kind of stock powder or bouillon cube or paste. Finally, add the cabbage and simmer for a bit. Okay, so the secret ingredient I was talking about is curry roux. Since we are making a hot pot, we don't need as much. Let's just add 1 cube. When you make curry, you usually cook the onions until they are really soft, but we don't need to do that here. It's a great way to use up any leftover veggies or mushrooms in your fridge. I was surprised to see so many people use golden curry in my last curry video. It seems to be popular overseas too. Once the roux is melted, simmer it for about 5 minutes. I sprinkle some parsley on top. And for a finishing touch, I'm going to make a curry zosui rice porridge. Leave some of the soup and add some rice. You could also use udon noodles and make a curry udon. Since I'm using a small amount of rice, I won't add any extra water. I wonder how much rice sumo wrestlers eat. They must eat a ton to build those big bodies. Let's crack an egg into the rice and cook it until it's set. Added some soy sauce. You can skip the egg if you want. And I highly recommend adding cheese. You can cook it for as long as you like. Those who want to enjoy a more light and soupy feeling should turn off the heat immediately. This is the best curry zosui ever. I'm definitely adding cheese next time. Next up, I'm going to show you how to make a classic Shio Chanko. I call it classic because it's a staple on the menu of any Chanko restaurant. Shio means salt, but salt is not the only seasoning used. This Chanko has a light flavor that really lets the chicken flavor shine through. For this recipe, we'll use onion, Napa cabbage, and Chinese chives. Napa cabbage is super popular in Chanko. It goes with any kind of Chanko, so I highly recommend it. And of course, the chicken is the star of the show. When making authentic Shio Chanko, small wrestlers boil chicken bones for about 2 hours to make a rich chicken broth. Since I can't get chicken bones, I'll use a broth made from boiling chicken thigh. After boiling the chicken, let's take it out so it doesn't get tough. Add some chicken stock powder, soy sauce, sake, and salt to the pot. Then add the Napa cabbage and onion and simmer until they are tender. By the way, you can add a little miso for a secret flavor, but I'm skipping it today. Napa cabbage gets really tender and delicious when it's cooked for a long time, so I highly recommend it. Also, Napa cabbage contains glutamic acid umami component, which enhances the flavor of the Chanko. Some people even add it when making ramen bowls. Finally, return the chicken to the pot. And add the Chinese chives. Sprinkle some sesame seeds on top if you like. The chives cook really quickly, so add them last. And there you have it, a delicious and classic Shio Chanko. Next up, I'm going to introduce you to Yukimi Chanko. Yukimi means viewing snow in Japanese, and it's named after the grated daikon radish that looks like snow, or more like sleet. By the way, we are going to do something a little different at the end of this one, so stay tuned. For this recipe, please prepare plenty of Napa cabbage. It goes really well with the main ingredients, pork and daikon. We'll use some of the daikon grated and some cut into pieces. I love daikon because they are so good for your stomach. Let's cut them into thin, small pieces. You can also add carrot if you have them. For the meat, I recommend using pork belly. If you want a healthier chanko, another part is fine. When I looked up recipes that small restaurants actually make, I found that many of them use pork belly. Using pork belly might make you feel more like a small wrestler. Let's grate the daikon beforehand. We'll squeeze out the excess water before serving. I recently ordered a new grater online, so I'm excited for it to arrive. In a pot, add the daikon, carrot, cabbage, and water. Simmer until the vegetables are tender. Once the vegetables are soft, add the pork belly. If you're concerned about the pork smell or if the meat isn't super fresh, you can boil it in a separate pot with boiling water and ginger before adding it to the main pot. I'm just going to add it directly and pour some sake over it. Add some mirin as well. Skim off any scum that forms. It's easier to remove the scum while the broth is boiling vigorously. Once the broth is clear, add the miso. We'll only add a little bit as it's just for flavor. Add a pinch of sugar to give it more depth. Stir it and then turn off the heat. Squeeze out the excess water from the grated daikon and place it in the center of the pot. Add plenty of it. Sprinkle some green onion on top if you like. And we are going to enjoy this with a ponzu sauce. Ponzu is made mainly from rice vinegar, soy sauce, and citrus juice. It's like a refreshing, slightly acidic soy sauce. If you don't have ponzu, you can make your own by mixing citrus juice, soy sauce, and rice vinegar. The style miso flavor in the chanko pairs really well with the ponzu sauce. For the final touch, I added a little rice and made a zosui. Even though there seemed to be a lot more soup than rice, it worked out perfectly when I cooked it. For me, eggs are a must for zosui. It was a little blunt, so I added some soy sauce. And I added some bonito flakes for extra umami. Alright, for our last recipe, we have a garlic miso salmon chanko. While small wrestlers tend to stick with meat-based chanko, they do enjoy fish-based one too. I thought salmon would be a popular choice for those outside of Japan. And of course, what's more Japanese than a salmon hot pot with miso? But we are not just using plain miso today. We are making a special garlic miso sauce. You can use any vegetable you like. Feel free to use any of the veggies from the other Chanko recipe. Or try adding leafy greens or sweet potatoes. Oh, and I forgot to mention, a lot of small wrestlers add konnyaku to their chanko. Since I have some thick fried tofu, a.k.a. in my fridge, I'm going to add that too. As usual, there are some small bones in the salmon, but I'm just going to cut it up with a knife. Let's make the sauce beforehand. First, grate the garlic. Add some sake. Then add miso, mirin, sugar, and dashi powder. I think I might have added a bit too much garlic. But I want a really garlicky miso sauce today. In a pot, add water, onion, carrot, and daikon, and simmer until they are tender. Then add the cabbage. Fried tofu, and salmon. Simmer until the salmon is cooked through. Don't forget to add the miso sauce. It's a bit tricky to stir without breaking the salmon in this small pot. I think I added too much thick fried tofu, so I'll take some out. I've never tried salmon and thick fried tofu together before, but they actually go really well together. And they pair perfectly with these flavorful miso balls. I hope you'll try making this into a zosui too. I've introduced you to 6 different Chanko Nabe recipes. Which one are you most excited to try at home? Hope you enjoy! Thank you so much for watching our video. Please subscribe to our channel. If you are already a subscriber and would like to support our channel, please join our membership. Membership feedback will be reflected in content creation. See you in the next video.